Welcome to the Midnight Shift, where the line between life and death blurs and the shadows hold secrets too terrifying to imagine. Tonight, we dive into a chilling true story that took place in an old, secluded hospital, where the night shift became a descent into pure horror. Our story begins in the heart of a remote town, home to St. Agnes Hospital, a facility with a long history and an even longer list of unexplained occurrences. Built in the early 1900s, St. Agnes was known for its state-of-the-art facilities and its unusually high patient mortality rate. Many believe the hospital's foundation was cursed, but it was the staff on the midnight shift who experienced the true terror. Over the years, St. Agnes became notorious among the locals. Rumors spread about patients who checked in but never checked out, mysterious disappearances, and strange noises that echoed through the empty hallways at night. Meet Sarah, a young, dedicated nurse who had recently moved to town. Fresh out of nursing school, she was eager to make a difference in the lives of her patients. When she was offered a position at St. Agnes, she jumped at the opportunity, despite the unsettling stories she'd heard. Sarah was assigned to the night shift, where she quickly bonded with her colleagues. They were a small, tight-knit group, all too familiar with the hospital's eerie reputation. Despite the odd occurrences, they laughed off the ghost stories and focused on their work. But that was about to change. It started with small things. Lights flickering, doors creaking open on their own, and cold drafts that seemed to come from nowhere. Sarah dismissed these as the quirks of an old building. But then, the occurrences became more personal. One night, as Sarah was doing her rounds, she entered room 307, a room that was supposed to be unoccupied. But when she opened the door, she saw an elderly woman sitting in the bed, staring blankly at the wall. "Sarah, ma'am, are you okay? How did you get here?" But the woman didn't respond. She simply turned her head, looked directly at Sarah, and smiled. A chill ran down Sarah's spine as the woman slowly faded from view, leaving the bed perfectly made, as if no one had been there at all. After that night, the hospital's haunting presence became impossible to ignore. Sarah began seeing shadows moving out of the corner of her eye, hearing whispers that had no source, and feeling a constant sense of being watched. Her colleagues noticed her growing anxiety, but they too were on edge. Each of them had their own stories: patients who vanished without a trace, ghostly apparitions, and the feeling that something malevolent lurked in the basement, where the hospital's oldest records were kept. It's the spirits of those who died here, unfinished business, maybe even revenge. One of her co-workers suggested, only half joking. Sarah tried to push these thoughts away, but the fear was becoming unbearable. It all came to a head one stormy night. The rain battered against the windows as the wind howled outside. The power flickered on and off, plunging the hospital into periods of complete darkness. It was during one of these blackouts that Sarah found herself in the basement, searching for patient files. As she searched, the temperature dropped suddenly, her breath visible in the air. She heard footsteps behind her, slow and deliberate. Sarah froze, too terrified to turn around. "Sarah, is someone there?" No answer, just the sound of footsteps getting closer and closer until they stopped right behind her. In a panic, she tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. It was as if something was holding it shut. The lights flickered back on for a brief moment, and Sarah saw it. An old man in a hospital gown, standing at the end of the hall, his eyes filled with sorrow and rage. "Old man, why did you let me die?" The lights went out again, and when they came back, he was gone. But the door was now open, and Sarah didn't hesitate. She ran back to the main floor, her heart pounding in her chest. Narrator, shaken, Sarah confided in her co-workers, but instead of disbelief, she found understanding. They too had seen the old man, known as Mr. Thompson. He was a former patient who had died under mysterious circumstances years ago, and it was said that his spirit haunted the hospital, seeking justice for his untimely death. They say he's been seen by every new nurse who works the night shift. It's like he's testing us, seeing if we'll help him find peace. Determined to put an end to the haunting, Sarah and her colleagues decided to investigate Mr. Thompson's death. They combed through old records, interviewed former staff, and pieced together a chilling story of neglect and malpractice that had been covered up for decades. With the truth uncovered, Sarah felt a strange mix of fear and resolve. She returned to the basement alone, knowing that this was where she would find Mr. Thompson's spirit. Armed with the truth, she called out to him, her voice trembling but strong. "Sarah, Mr. Thompson, I know what happened to you. You were wronged, and I'm sorry. But you don't have to suffer anymore. We'll make sure your story is told." For a moment, the basement was filled with an overwhelming sense of sadness, but it quickly faded as Mr. Thompson's spirit seemed to soften. He gave Sarah a grateful nod before fading away, this time for good. After that night, the strange occurrences at St. Agnes began to dwindle. The hospital felt lighter, as if a dark cloud had been lifted. Sarah and her colleagues made sure that Mr. Thompson's story was brought to light, and with it, the hospital's dark past. Sarah continued to work at St. Agnes, but she never forgot the night she faced the ghost of Mr. Thompson. And though the midnight shift still held its share of odd happenings, none were as terrifying as the events she survived. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the haunted halls of St. Agnes. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chilling tales from the dark corners of our world. Have your own spooky experience to share? Leave it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep your lights on and beware the shadows.